Thank you. Awesome. So, hey everyone, super excited to be here today. Really wanted to lead a discussion on healthy buildings, and more specifically, the human health aspects of healthy buildings. So, to kick us off, I want to share a quick story about a time not too long ago when hundreds of thousands of people were hospitalized. Schools were closing, states were declaring public health emergencies, and there are so many people going to hospitals with flu-like symptoms, with fevers, that the hospitals were overwhelmed, and they literally had to prop up tents in parking lots to take care of people. So I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, I've heard this story before. We've been talking about COVID for a couple years now, and I get it, it's bad. And you're right, COVID was bad, but I'm not talking about COVID at all. In fact, I'm talking about the flu season of 2018. So 2018 was one of the deadliest flus that we've had on record, and in fact, it killed 80,000 Americans. So, as we kind of emerge from COVID-19, many of us, myself included, are ready to get back to a sort of a place of normalcy, back to how things were. And I think it's worth calling out that, before COVID-19, things weren't necessarily all that great. In fact, every single year, 40 million Americans got the flu. 20 million Americans got norovirus, or the stomach bug. And millions more were hospitalized, died, or negatively impacted by things like pneumonia, E. coli, staph infections. And the cost of this is tremendous. It's not really just a public health issue or a government issue or a community issue. It's also an economic issue as well. And it turns out that all of this sickness is really, really impactful to U.S. corporations and organizations more broadly. In fact, about $500 billion are essentially wasted by U.S. employers each year due to sick days. These are things like people, losing productivity or not working at an optimal rate because they're not feeling well, or long-term or short-term disability because people have to take time off of work. Things that companies need to fund from a bottom-line perspective, but also things that negatively impact their output. And what's crazy is this actually equates sort of per employee to about $4,000 per year. And if you think about the range of types of businesses, when you think about financial institutions or technology companies, this number can be a heck of a lot higher. Now, what's interesting is that while we were fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, we actually inadvertently solved some of the problems with other sicknesses like the flu. And in fact, we basically for a season completely wiped out the flu. And so this tells us that when we have a strategic approach, when we think carefully about safety protocols and we invest in new technologies, there are ways that we can solve some of these health crises and the impact it has on organizations. So switching gears a little bit and thinking more about sort of the recent updates from COVID-19, one of the things that COVID-19 did was it really kind of opened our eyes and changed the way that we think about indoor environments. Every organization, from all the way up to the CEO, people are now acutely aware of what happens when I go into a space. Is there risk when I go there? Are pathogens spreading? And that fear or that way of thinking has dramatically changed the way that employees in a corporation think about the risk of working from home or going to the office. And in fact, the vast majority of employees frankly want to work from home, and the leading driver of that is they're worried about getting sick. And they know or they feel that there's a greater risk of them catching COVID-19 or some other sickness when they go to the office. So this mindset is really more of a permanent change. And it also impacts the way that employees think about their bosses and the places that they work. So over 4 of 5 Americans think that even though it's important to get vaccinated, there are still things that employers or businesses need to do to keep people safe. And 91% of employees believe that it's their company's responsibility, it's their boss's responsibility to keep them safe from infectious disease. And given the current sort of labor market that we're in, 60% of folks will say, I will leave if I don't feel safe at my job. So for any organization, the most valuable asset, which is talent, has clearly stated, hey, I need to be taken care of if I'm going to continue to work and be productive. And so the question then becomes, what do we actually do? How do we actually keep people safe? We've been investing in cleaning, we've been investing in changing protocols, we've been investing in social distancing. What else can I do to actually guarantee that my employees are safe when they come to work? So at R0, we take a very academic approach to helping organizations understand what are the things that they can do. We've partnered with the Chan School of Public Health at Harvard. We have a strategic partnership with the Mayo Clinic. And we've run a lot of clinical studies, and I'll kind of share I won't share the boring notes of all of it, but when we think about indoor disease spread, there's really 4 things that matter. One is improving indoor air quality. This is probably the most critical aspect, making sure that we have clean air from the outdoors that are coming in, making sure that we're upgrading our filtration systems to MERV 13, but also making sure we're thinking strategically about our buildings and what are the limitations, where are there places where maybe circulation isn't quite as great, and finding ways to supplement that with portable air purifiers. The second most important thing is disinfection. And improving the HVAC system or improving air circulation alone isn't enough. There's a famous sort of graphic from the first super spreader event in Wuhan. And what actually happened in that scenario was everyone came to a restaurant, there's an infected person, and the HVAC system drew air across the restaurant, and it drew COVID-19 particles and got many, many people sick. So to really sort of solve the problem of disease spread, you really need to focus on the source, and that's in room, not just in the duct. So there's a number of technologies, part of which R0 sells, so quick plug for R0, around UV, whether it's UVC or far UV, that can actually disinfect spaces that are both occupied or unoccupied. So making sure that you're solving problems as people are in the room. And then the other thing is you need to focus on air and surfaces. So a lot of the efforts that our janitors are using every single day are really focused on cleaning surfaces, right? Wiping surfaces down, making sure that handles are clean for people. And the reality is that the biggest dangers are actually the air, people talking, having a conversation. And that's challenging, right? Because when we bring people into an office, what we really want them to do is collaborate. So there are technologies out there that are focused on this. And so think clearly about what are the things I can do to keep people safe in a dynamic environment. The third is making sure that the health and safety protocols that we've implemented for COVID-19 are scalable and they stay intact. We need to shift from being just reactive to outbreaks or risk to really thinking proactively. What are the things that I can do now in this flu season where there is higher risk to make sure there are less disruptions? Making sure we take a layered approach. We're trying to solve this problem in multiple ways that are best fit for our buildings. And then making sure that we have plans in place to ensure the continuity of our business. There's going to be disruptions going forward. How can we ensure that we operate smoothly so that disruptions from sickness don't totally destroy our business? And the last, which is maybe the most important, is making sure that all of this effort is effectively communicated to employees. Employees need to feel safe, they need to know they're safe, and the only way for that to happen is for the people they trust, for their employers, to effectively communicate what's being done to protect them. Think about displaying the cleaning efforts that are going. Think about having notifications on the investments and the updates that you're making. And also giving people, closing the feedback loop and giving people updates on what's actually driving impact, how are these things working. So this is a lot, right? There's a lot of things to think about here. And it's not possible to update your entire building in 1 month or 1 week before people return to the office. So there's some important considerations to take into account. When you're thinking about protecting your space, you need to understand, what are the constraints of my building? How old is my building? What labor do I actually have access to? We need to understand, what are the goals of the building? What do I want people to do in my offices? Or do I want people to collaborate? Do I want to have a safe, quiet space for parents who are with kids to come work? These types of decisions really sort of impact the types of investments and the types of changes that organizations need to make. And then last, make sure you do your homework. This is a new space. There's lots of new technologies. There's lots of new types of approaches. And so it's important to have a sort of cost-benefit approach. What are the things that I can do that give me the most bang for my buck, that give me the best outcomes for the most reasonable amount of money? And just to kind of recap here, this is really important. The benefits of doing this are truly, truly immense. Healthy buildings are critical to a healthy workforce, which means that it's a more productive workforce where you'll have reduced sick days, lower costs, higher productivity, but most importantly, your employees will have peace of mind. And a happier environment is a more engaged environment that allows your employees to be more creative and better drive for results. So if you're interested in learning more and really learning about how R0 can help you achieve a healthy building, we'll be in the exhibit hall and are happy to answer questions. Thank you.